Okay, before I invite Mahek to the session, I just wanted to talk about these tech talks that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks and the idea behind these tech talks. So, these tech talks, which is brought to you by the Indian Women Cinematographers Collective, is supposed to have filmmakers from all over talk about their process, their journey, because filmmaking is about broadening our horizons. And these tech talks are supposed to be holistic conversations with these filmmakers. And other than the technical process of how they do what they do, also get into their journey, how they reached where they reached, and to understand from it, take inspiration from it, and which can help us become better filmmakers and do what we want to do. So I hope that you keep joining us because we have some very interesting sessions lined up for the future. And this session is going to be another kick-ass one. So let me not keep you waiting for the person who you are actually here to listen to. I just need to invite Mehek.
Hi, Mehak.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for joining us. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, IWCC, and you for inviting me. It's
It's
nice
our
to be here.
pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this session. And also, just to inform everyone who has tuned in, I mean, from whatever prep we have been doing, it's very clear that this session might go beyond an hour. So I will, as we reach towards the end of our 1 hour, I will restart the session. So I request all of you to join in again for whatever interesting part will be left to speak about. Mehak, I want to start with your beginning, which is you were an editor. I mean, you are an editor, but you started out as an editor and then you moved on to being a DIT and a colorist, which is,
Yeah.
which is quite a transition. So how did you go about making that transition?
Actually, I studied film editing and sound design from LV Prasad Academy in Chennai, and the day after I finished my course, I got a call for a job, which was to transcode the digital footage, and I'm talking about 2010. And
Right.
we in the institute we were still working with film. I mean, we were not cutting film for editing, but we were working on the film footage. And for digital, we had only had one workshop with the red camera people. And when I heard the term ProRes, and I was like, oh my god, what is this now, ProRes? And and Arun IKC, he was handling the digital workflow on this film, bilingual film called Payanam. And he had taken our workshop, so he called our HOD and he said, I'm looking for people who
Hmm.
can join me and help me. And I said okay. I had no job anyway after passing out, so I went to him and he gave me this. So they had already shot like a month in Himachal, and they had all this footage from different cameras. We had Red One camera at that point of time, so there was Red One, SI2K. There was this tiny camera SI2K which they would put
Yeah.
inside near the car wheels, and 7D. And at that point of time, we were using FCP7 log and transfer to
Right.
transcode most of the footage. And that was my first job. And then I kept working on the film. I went on set for the next schedule. I was doing the same thing on set. We didn't know at that point of time that there is a different uh, title for this kind of job, and I was editing, like doing editing at the end of the day, and offloading cards and transcoding. And so that was first, and then I worked on the post production of the film, and I came to Bombay because the grade was happening in Bombay, and I didn't go back. And I found work with other editors. I worked with Deepika Kalra, Bakul, and
Bakul is here.
Uh,
I saw him. Sorry to
Hi,
interrupt, but
Bakul.
I I saw Bakul some time back.
And so that was the first major turning point in my life. And then I kind of still didn't see it as a career shift or anything. And I went back to the world of editing. And I was working with Shan Mohammed on Fireflies, which Shankar Raman was shooting, and that became another turning point in my life because I met so many wonderful people on that film, and it's like the lifelong relationship that I built on that movie. So Shankar sir was shooting a music video on Red Camera with the same director Sabal Shekhawat, and I was in the office because I was working on the edit, and he said, you know anything about Red Camera? And I was like, yeah, maybe, I worked on this. So he said, why don't you help me on set? And I went to set with them, and yeah, and then he started calling me for his other shoots, and I was just going as a data manager. At that point of time, I had no idea whatsoever about image making or processing, and um, so I was offloading, and I was using Resolve 8, I think, at that point of time, to put Rec 709 LUT and just transcode it, and that's it. That was all about it. And slowly and slowly he kind of trained me into, like, okay, no, I just want to do a little bit of grading. Would you do some adjust little bit of blue in the shadows? And I was like, okay. And I never thought I would be doing this. And then I did a film with Sylvester. It was his first feature, Island City, and he called me to do work as a DIT, and he said he wanted me to grade dailies, and I was like, I had never really graded anything, and he's like, no, it'll be fine. And that was a first long form for me on set, and that was an amazing experience. So we were grading dailies, and he was like, this is good. Why don't you grade more? And I said, okay, you think so? Okay, I'll try. And I started grading on my laptop, but I kept doing all my edit jobs on the side, and because still there was no way of, because we didn't have anybody to look at, okay, this can be a career opportunity. Like, I didn't think so that I could
This
be a
was which
DIT.
year? Which year was
Uh,
this?
2013, 14, we did Island City. And so after the film finished, I graded a short film with Sylvester. We hooked up his TV to my laptop and we graded one short film which was directed by Arun Sukumar, and again Deepika had edited it, and that was fun. And I think that it's a very slow transition. I mean, then I did a documentary. So Neil Sadwelkar, he called me to his studio to grade one documentary. It was a beautiful film. It's called The Last Edu. Shabnam Sukhdev had edited it, directed it, and Jabin had edited it. And I graded that. I took forever to grade that film because it was my
How
first
how long
film.
how long was that documentary in terms of
I think it was
duration?
an hour long. I'm not too
Okay.
sure. I think it was an hour long film, and there was
Documentaries can
so.
always be the hardest to grade. I mean,
And
isn't it?
I was just beginning, I didn't really know much about it. I was just, and also you are looking at an image and like, acha, what am I doing with it, so
Right.
that was also like a big question. That's always a big question. I think it still is, but it's like, okay, what am I doing? Okay, because you're like, okay, you can fix things, but you need to have an eye of where you want to take it, right? And so like, okay, I took forever to grade that. And but it was a beautiful documentary, and it moves me every time I think about it, and every day I worked on it, it moved me. And then the film went on to win National Award for the best biographical film that year.
Right.
And this is 2014. And
Where can
slowly,
we
so
where can
where
we
can we
see it?
watch it? I will
Yeah.
have to ask Jabeen. I'll ask Jabeen and Shabnam.
Please do. Please do. We had another filmmaker about 10 days back, a great director, and
Yeah.
her first film also is not easily available, but we requested her to share the film with us, and she did. And it's amazing to see these projects which are in which you have put in so much of heart and soul,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
also
yeah.
many times these projects are not even available on a
Yeah,
on a public platform. So
yeah, yeah.
do share it with us, and we'll be happy to
Yeah, yeah.
ask. And
Solanki just mentioned it. So it was a FD film actually, film division film. So they did
right,
some screenings after that. So maybe we
right,
can figure, if they
definitely.
have a copy online. But I'll check with Shabnam and Jabeen as well. And so that was that.
This
And then I kept going on set. I did Rocky Handsome, which was a major project for me as a DIT. That was okay, somebody says the film is available on YouTube.
okay.
Shruyesh,
Thank
he's
you so
saying
much,
it's a,
Sanima.
Shruyesh,
Sanima
he's
student.
Shruyesh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so Rocky Handsome basically happened after Island City. I think 2014 June we started shooting it. So Shankar sir was going to shoot it, and I always love to work with him. And I knew he had some other DIT, but I didn't stop myself. I went ahead and I said, I want to work with you, and I want to do this. And he said, I'm already working with somebody else. But I said, okay, I just wanted to put it out there. And somehow that other person couldn't work. So I got a call and I was like, wow. And that was a place, I think, where he kind of groomed me to be a DIT, and like what it is to be on set, how do you deal with people, how do you deal with situation, how do you look at a image, like it was like I didn't know how to check focus, right? I didn't know what way I'm looking at. And he said, okay, sit on the monitor and just check focus. And I was like, okay. And that's how I learned everything, like on that film set. And dealing with flickers. I remember there was a day we were shooting an interior office scene, and we had to stop the shoot because the lights were flickering, and we couldn't see it on the monitor, but we had shot like a couple of shots and we were just testing it, and I saw it on the laptop and I was like, oh shoot, it's flickering. And I went and told them, and then we tested all the lights. It was even baby was flickering, all the lights were flickering, and then we had to change generator frequency and whatnot to kind of figure this out. So it was like, okay, what else you're doing, okay, what pops up. And so it was a long project, and I got so much love on that project, so much love. Rishi sir and my whole team, Pradeep ji, Tojo, and everybody who was there. So that I think that was a major project where I kind of thought, okay, I could, pursue this, and because I was enjoying it as well. And then I did Gurgaon with him, and I kept doing small grading jobs like music videos and short, whatever I could do on my laptop. And then I met Sid. I
Sid.
think in 2016, I was on a film's and commercial shoot, and Sid posted on YouTube, on Facebook. He was looking for a colorist, and I called him, and we met the same day after the shoot, and it was great. And I had heard about him, but I had never met him.
Right.
And I was so he already had a grading room, and he wanted to expand, and he had already graded this beautiful film Labor of Love and so many other projects. And yeah, I'm talking about Sid Meer.
Yes,
And
it is the Sid Meer, the
the Sid
coolest,
Meer.
the coolest guy. I met Sid in 2011 on the first film that I was assisting on.
Yeah.
And he's the coolest.
He
So
is.
then,
He is the coolest. And and I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting from that meeting, but it was awesome. And he told me about what he was doing, and he was doing a lot of things. It was just not color grading, and he was involved in the DID project, this live grade, and archiving, and all sorts of things. And I was like, okay, I would like to do this. And we never had any formal conversations of joining or saying, ki, okay, let's work from tomorrow. And it was like, it happened. And I was, after that, I was grading a short, Colin D'Cunas. He had made this film called Babu's Dilemma, short film. And I told Sid, I'm grading this on my laptop. Can I come? And he said, yeah, just come to studio. And he gave me the key of his house. And I was like, what? And Sid was still
yeah,
staying there. Sid was still staying
trust
there. And
Sid to do that. Yeah.
imagine, like day
Yeah.
one. And I did that film. And then I did another feature with Archana, the bizarre murder of Mr. Thrusker. That's what it says on YouTube, on IMDb. So I did that, and then from there on, it's been a blur. Like last few years with Sid, last 4 years with Bridgepost Works have been such an amazing journey to learn and to work on so many beautiful projects and to meet so many awesome filmmakers. Like our studio is like one adda, okay? And like
Right.
there's so many people just bump and they'll come, and we have these beautiful relationships with all our clients. And because we work on like these indie projects, and where you don't have to go through a lot of channels. You're directly talking to your DP, you're directly talking to your director, you're hanging out with them, they are coming, dropping hard drives. Because it's not like a studio system in
Right.
these movies, and we get to see, well, I'd say that Sid has built this whole space, where people call us and tell us, this is the film we are doing and we want you to grade it. And we see all these beautiful films, and we are like, wow, we are lucky. And
Right.
that we kind of get to do all these beautiful projects, and most of our films go to these festivals, and it's great.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say
I
I
get
wouldn't
to,
say lucky. I would say that both of you teaming up together, and I know you are a very talented person, and and Sid also has all these grand plans. Like even when I
always.
met him in the initial days, he sees really far. I mean, his vision is always to kind of bring in more and more in terms of technology, streamlining the workflow and everything. And I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
two of the cool people collaborating, and I'm sure like whoever else joins, everyone who joins Bridgepost Work will be equally talented. So it's not only luck. I wouldn't say lucky.
I think you're right. And it's also the energy that is there. Like, when I started working with Sid, he never told me like how to look at an image, because I was still learning, I'm still, when I started working with Sid, I've done like few projects and, just ballparking it. But what it takes to kind of build a look, do a long form. Like, it's easy to do like 2 minute with film or video, and then to do a long form and bring that consistency. And so he never told me, do this, do that, or he always just let me be. And I was like, Arey, yaar, tell me something, in the beginning. And he wouldn't. He said no. And he wouldn't say he likes something until he actually does. So if he says, okay, yeah, this looks nice, and I was like, oh my god, Cool now. So
So
we
now,
have been. Hmm.
sorry. No, I was just going to say that, that's been the thing. I think I had to take a call at some point in my career to stop calling Sid for any troubleshooting, because I had gotten into this bad habit of, like, if there's any trouble, call him. So I had to, like, literally stop myself at some point. Even Siddharth, who's here with us, he has mentioned the same thing, that if any problem, call Sid. But
Yeah,
as
yeah,
much as,
yeah,
like, I would love to, talk about Sid, but I am going to now circle back to the films that you have ended up grading, over a course of your work as a colorist. There are so many. I mean, so like you said, many of them have gone to film festivals, and they're amazing films. Like, be it Amis, the most recent, or Bhasmasur, or Gamak Ghar. I mean, I
yeah.
loved Gamak Ghar. It was. I think in some article it was, the images were compared to the images of, let's say, a film of Korida, and who's another favorite
Ozu.
filmmaker of mine, Ozu. Yes. And so, how is it when you are collaborating with these different cinematographers and different kind of films? What is your process?
Uh, I mean, most of these films came to us in post. So uh, the heavy duty work was already done, when it came to us. And
Right.
on Gamak Ghar, uh, Achal and Anand and Avni, they had kind of already built that world.
Hmm.
And when I heard about the film, so I was shooting for Leela at that point of time when Anand called me, and he wouldn't say anything on the phone, and he wanted to meet me. So I came back and I met him in a cafe next to our studio, and we sat there, and then he was telling me the whole story about the film, and I just couldn't stop myself but crying, because I this is such a beautiful story when you think about it. And I was like, oh my god. And I thought about the house where I was raised, and which is not there anymore, and I was like, oh my god, I don't even have a brick from that house, and it's only in my memories. I don't know if I've even have any photograph of that house. And I was like, oh my god, it was so beautiful to just hear about the film. And then he showed me those images, and I was like, I came
Did you
back and
actually take? Did you actually take any? Were any of the? I don't know if references were shared with you. Were there any
yeah,
references
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
Anand
yeah.
checked? And did any
Yeah.
of the references actually include Korida and Ozu's work, or
See,
was it just?
I'll tell you about the references. So I came back to the studio and I said, we are going to do this film, whatever happens. And I was like, it's a most beautiful film, and I connect with it so much, and the way it's been shot and designed, it's beautiful, and it would be so much fun to do this. And we are creating three different time of the in the house. And the thing that also touched me was that it was Achal's own house. And it was I don't know, it was a moment. So we started talking about the film, and the references which were there for the film were for the first part of the film were actually the actual photos
Of the house?
from the family album. Yes, and
Okay.
one of the photos Achal shared today on Insta also. That shot where women are wearing saris. So they even use the composition also from there.
Hmm.
So before I started grading, I said, okay, why don't you send me all those photos that you used while shooting? So I can incorporate that in the grade as well. And they sent them, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. And then that was the beginning point for us for that film. So in like the process for Gamak Ghar was that these two people, Anand and Achal, they knew what they wanted, okay, and they had shot it exactly the way they wanted it. So there was no fixing at all. There was no correction at all in the film. Last
Right.
month or 3 months ago, we went to see a film, and that's when Achal told me that there was a day for night shoot shot in the film, and I was like, which one was it? I didn't even know. So they shot it the way they wanted it. So my job was just to kind of work on how to make it in the zone, like just take it in the zone. And so we worked on that. So that is the beautiful process, because you are not correcting anything, and you're just spending your time on kind of enhancing and just taking it where just taking it close to the story, where you can night for day, not day for night. Okay. And so yeah, so and with Amis, so I when I saw the film, so Sham, who's a producer, and Riju had come to the studio to show us the film, and the film was still in log when we saw it, because they edited in log. But when I saw the film, like we saw it, and I was speechless, and I was like, even if nobody does anything to the film, it's beautiful, because the story, it hits you so hard, and it's like it just shakes you up, and you can't speak anything for some time. And then I remembered, after I saw the film, I remembered that Sid had told me about the film few months ago, and what I had imagined was completely different. And so then we got the footage. We got I sat with Riju, and we basically, they just wanted the idea behind the film was like they didn't want very stylized grade. We didn't want to like push the image, and we were like, we like the way it is, the way it was shot, and we worked on that. And there is something about working on a film that you like, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
There is this energy with which you wake
I'm
up.
sure.
And
Right.
yeah, and I was doing morning shift, so we would do like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. shift, and you are like, you're like fresh, your eyes are fresh, and you are like so excited to go to the studio and start working on these images. And with Amis also, there was very little fixing. It was shot in shot that way, like we didn't have to fix anything. And you can see
Okay.
Gamaghar on movie.
Yes, I was going to announce it in a bit, but I didn't want to like. Yes, so everyone who is so curious about the film Gamaghar, they can see it on movie. Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
and Amis is on Movie Saints, moviesaints.com. They have Amis. You can watch it there. So, and so it's kind of, I don't know, with some people, you work, it just clicks. You do a session, and you feel you have got where they want the film to be, what they like, and they also get a sense of okay, she has got what we want. And that's a beautiful, smooth process, because then you are like kind of working and discussing, and you're like, okay, this is how I see it. Riju would say, yeah, it looks good, but can we just slightly take it this side or slightly take it that side. And that was about it. We were mostly kind of, we graded it in like a week, the whole film. And
Wow.
it was
How
smooth.
many? What hours were you pulling in a day for a week?
We do at that point of time, I was doing 6 day a week, and we were doing, so it was a 7 shifts grade, and one shift is like 8 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was even Gamaghar was a 7 shift film.
In a week. So basically, that was also graded in a week.
Yes,
That's amazing.
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that speaks for how the film was pretty much close to what it wanted when it was shot.
Yeah. You know, the maximum time that we spent was on the first 1998 because we were trying this look, and there were very few shots in the film as compared
Right.
to a normal drama. In Gamaga there were very few shots, and so the last two parts we spent the least time. The first part was where we kind of spent a lot of time, and there are a lot of layers to create, because you know the way digital cameras are so sharp, like so sharp, and you would do something, it's like, no, it still looks sharp. You do something, it still looks sharp, and there were so
Right.
many layers of texture on that. I mean, it's interesting,
Yeah.
and we are very happy with where we could take it, and yeah.
So, Meg, in both with both Amis and Gamaghar, that you were involved after the film had finished shooting, correct?
Yeah.
So, there are also projects when you get involved beforehand and then create
yeah.
LUTs. So, can you tell us a bit about that?
So basically, most of the projects that we get is like after they have been shot. But you know, after you build a relationship with the DP and the director, the next project, you know, they kind of involve you because they kind of see the importance of bringing a colorist in pre, and how, you know, you can save up so much time, and you can, you know, kind of spend time on set uh, working on it, and less time in the color room where you can just enhance it. So like, you know, Achal is working on a project, and we are already starting like camera tests and all. We have already, like, we have not, we couldn't sit on it because of lockdown, but we had already doing that.
So, what all do you take into account when you're doing camera tests during the pre-production,
So
in terms of keeping in mind the grading later on and creating LUTs? How do you
Yeah.
go about it?
So basically, I always encourage them to test all the cameras. So sometimes we have a fixed cameras, so you test that. But sometimes we are kind of still thinking which camera to use. So you test all the cameras, and there are lenses. So the cameras you want to test for the sensor. What is the latitude and how much you can push it, how much you cannot push it, how does the color react when it's underexposed, and when it is overexposed. So you kind of do all those tests with all the cameras. And if you are shooting with like with ARRI, you are like ARRI RAW most of the time, or ProRes. But if you are shooting with any Sony camera or any Canon camera, so they have so many log profiles. So you test all those log profiles, and you see which one works best for you in the circumstances that you are going to shoot in. Then you test all the lenses, and so we do like two kind of tests. So these are all tests to kind of finalize your gear. Okay. And you test the lights that you are going to use, and then we do another test. So the second test is testing the gear that is going on set. So because you know, you must have checked one Alexa Mini, and you tested the camera for its capabilities, but now you test the camera for its condition, right? So you test the camera before you go on set. Okay, the sensor is clean, everything else. So it's not only for colorists to see, even the first AC checks all the lenses for the focus and everything. And if there is any, so we check if the sensor is clear, the clean, because you know, we have encountered with a lot of my projects, we have encountered, like, we have come and grade, and there is this pink funny dots, ugly pink funny dots in the middle of the frame.
Right.
And
Those words really bring some nightmarish memory to my head. ugly pink dots, you know. Maybe if Sid is still here, he'll know what I'm talking about. But yes,
He
yeah,
knows.
those hiccups are some of the things that you know can get overlooked, and no matter what project it is, I think it's important to test for all these things because these are the things which can save a lot of trouble later on.
Oh my God. Oh, yes. You have to sit and clean all those dots. And, there was this project. So I was on a ad shoot. We were shooting in Bangalore. And somehow they gave me the call time for the second location. And they went and shot some early morning shoots. And I reached on location. I got the first card. And I'm like, oh my God, what's happening there are like 6, 7 pink dots. And we were like, okay, what is this? I saw all the shots. It was exactly at the same place. So I said, okay, it has to be in the camera. And somehow on the big monitor on set, they couldn't see it. And I was like, okay, then I went and checked in Viewfinder. I couldn't see it through Viewfinder also. So, but the dots were certainly there. So we called for another camera for the next day, but all that day's footage, because we couldn't stop the day because of the actors and the location, and it was an outdoor, so you um, kind of shoot it. So all those shots were sent to VFX for cleanup. And so you kind of save all of that. So if you
Yeah.
and if sometimes some lenses have some kind of tints, you test your filters, like all that green in the ND filters. So I remember on Lela we had tested so many filters, and sometimes some were yellowish, some were greenish. So if you know beforehand, so you kind of try and see how you can compensate it if you cannot replace it. But I
Right.
think it's better to know, like, what if you're getting some kind of tint or color, some cast, so how some like old zoom lenses, they have this uh, yellow cast to it, which is different, like on Suitable Boy we were doing that. So we had like some very old beautiful zoom lenses, but they had a very different yellow cast to it, like very strong yellow cast to it. So but we were doing the live grade on it, so we would just
Yeah.
handle it there. But yeah, so we kind of do all these tests before. And in terms of creating LUT, so what we kind of do is what we can do is so we can shoot some footage and we can create LUT based on that. And you can also create versions of it. So say you have shot something and you're like, okay, the DP's like, okay, I like it the way it is. Can you make some versions which like -1 green or +1 green, and add some more saturation or reduce it and all of that. So you kind of make bunch of LUTs and you send them off to set. And once they are there and they are looking at the footage, so they can say, okay, we need to tweak this little bit. So you can do that. Or if they can, Mulika ka, if they can send you some footage from set, like in Alexa cameras, you can capture log DPX on the SD card, right? So if they can send you that, and you can grade that, and you can kind of make LUT based on that and you can kind of fine tune it based on that. So all of that we can do, and if that works. But there are like multiple
So
ways of
I'll take up
dealing with this.
a
Yeah.
question. One of the questions was from Priya Seth, another cinematographer from
Hi,
our.
Priya.
And Priya has a question that do you prefer providing the DP with a LUT, or or are you satisfied with them using Rec 709?
See, it depends project to project. Uh, so sometimes we are going for a very, very specific look, and
Hmm.
it becomes like very important that you have that LUT in the camera so that you can light it according to that,
Right.
and then there is another benefit of the whole workflow. So another thing is, when you are shooting long form, and if you are not grading your dailies, so say either you have a dailies colorist, so you, even if you don't add a lot to the camera, you have a dailies colorist who's grading all the footage at the end of the day and sending that to the editor, or you have a LUT, or you are doing a live grade. So all the benefit of this is, one is like, what you are shooting, what you are lighting for, the kind of final look. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but closer to that. And another is like, your director and your editor and your producer are going to sit with that footage for like 6 months, or we don't know how long, and they kind of get used to of that Rec 709 look that you have, and because they keep seeing it again and again and again and again, and
Or
when
God
they
forbid,
finally,
log.
oh no,
Sometimes log. God
yeah,
forbid
yeah,
that
yeah,
also.
yeah. So that is another part of the workflow. I mean, that is, nobody
Hmm.
should see log, I mean,
Right.
log is not to be seen, or log is not to be watched. You shoot it, you check it in camera, and that's about it. You are not supposed to watch log for that. So
Right.
your director is sitting with that, and when they come to the color bay, and they are like, we kind of like it, but we could somehow see little bit more, or we like the way how it was in offline, and you're like, but that was offline. So it could be frustrating. So I'll give you a very good example on Leila. So what we did, so Johan was shooting it, and Joe Goller from Harbor Pictures US, he was a colorist, and he had made these LUTs for him. So he had made 3 LUTs, and he chose 1 LUT, and we shot the whole thing. So this LUT was in the camera, and I was doing the dailies color at the end of the day. Nobody ever saw what Rec 709 looked like, ever, ever, because it was in the camera, okay. And once it was in the camera, and then I was applying that LUT and grading the dailies above it. So in the whole chain, everywhere the VFX was given the LUT. So whenever they did any VFX, they sent the offlines to the director with that LUT. So nobody ever saw what Rec 709 looked like,
Right.
and so nobody, when the final film was graded, so Jaw has graded 4 episodes, and Sid had graded episode 5 and 6. So when the final thing came, so it looked similar to what we did on set, because that's how it was the planned. If imagine, and it was a very strong look, and imagine seeing Rec 709 on set, which was like quite warm. Like, I saw it in a couple of I also didn't see it much. I saw it a couple of times to see how it looks, and we saw it on set. We saw this grade on set, and everybody kind of consume those images with that grade. So when the final grade was out, nobody was surprised,
Right.
and this. So it's the same thing happened on Rocky Handsome also with us. So in that also, we were doing a dailies grade at the end of the day. And I remember Ashirwad was grading the film, and Shankar sir was going to grade the promo of the film. I couldn't go. I think I was shooting or something, and I couldn't go. And when he sent me the trailer, I was like, this is the offline, just send me the grade. He said, this is a grade, because it looked like what we did on set.
Hmm.
like end of the day. So the idea is all this key, you are enhancing and you know what it looks like now, because you are also seeing it with the grade, so you kind of also know what works, what doesn't work,
Right.
you know. So you are like, okay, this works for me, but maybe this highlight in the background, maybe we could do a window on this door, or so you kind of work on those in the
Right.
post, and
Right.
that's amazing because you are not fixing things. Yeah.
So there are some couple of questions flowing in, although I was planning on taking them later, but let's address them now.
Hi,
Uh,
Shayan.
so Vandita has a question. Do you prefer working with aces?
uh, um I do work in ACES for a lot of projects, and I mean, it depends. It kind of uh, depends from film to film. So, say if you are already you are using a LUT, okay, a customized LUT. So you don't need to go in the ACES because you already have a LUT and you kind of use that LUT and work on it. I remember using, but I think on somehow for me on when I've used like Sony A7S and FS7 footage, working on ACES has kind of worked very well for me,
Right.
because in ACES you get a very good beginning point. So the starting point is it's good, and uh, so you get to dial in the look early on, otherwise you have to kind of balance it and then kind of bring it to that. So I kind of use it on a lot of projects, but not all my projects. Like I
Right.
remember on Gama Ghar, so Amis we did in ACES. Most of our Alexa projects we kind of end up working in ACES, unless there is a specific LUT that is already there and we are using it. And Amis we did in ACES, and so on Gama Ghar, the beginning part, I wanted to use some LUTs, so I didn't take that to ACES. So it kind of depends on the workflow, like what is it that DP wants, or what is it the final output is going to be. So we kind of decide based on that. So it works for some project, like for say most of the films that we work on, which are shot on red cameras, we use the IPP2 workflow, and so it varies project to project. Like Cheesecake was shot on red, so we
Right.
did IPP2
Pooja is
workflow on
here,
that. Hi,
the
Pooja.
cinematographer of Cheesecake. I believe you've worked with a lot of cinematographers who are part of the IWCC group.
Yes,
A
I
lot
have.
of them have worked with you,
I
and
have.
I mean, I'm just waiting for more questions from them. But at the same time, when you spoke about, let's say camera tests and how you, and even when you shared about the incident with the when there was an issue with the sensor, and you were on that project as a DIT.
Yeah.
So can you get into more detail about how a DIT is supposed to function? Because I think in India it's not still used to its best capacity.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, basically, DIT is DP's best friend on set. I
Right,
would say that, because you basically you are handling data, you are doing the whole data management part, and as at the same time you're also checking the image, and you have tools available to you where you can, the last project I did as a DIT was A Suitable Boy with Declan, and it was a long project,
right.
but awesome one. So what
Can you
we were doing, yeah.
share some, yeah, some of the learnings from there?
Yes, so it was a big one for me and Sid, and yeah, so we had two units. So Meera was directing one, and Shimit was doing the additional unit, and um, so what and we had like three Sony Venice cameras, so we had two cameras, and the additional unit had one camera, and we were also doing live grade on it because. Declan was going to be in US and the post was happening in London, and he was grading it with I mean, he wasn't sure if he would be there for the grade, if he could fly, and which didn't happen. Like now in Corona, they
Yeah.
are remotely grading it. He is in US, so he wanted to do the live grade, and so I had a team of 4 people. So I had a data manager with me on my unit. We had a data manager on this additional unit, and we had a dailies colorist, and we had the full, like, the studio setup. We had the same setup we had in the production office, where so we would on set. So we had the scopes and we had the calibrated monitors, two monitors, because we had two cameras. So we were taking the live feed in from the SDI feed in from the camera. And so we had the image and we could and Declan was not operating, so Declan was with me on the in the DIT tent all the time, and we were also controlling the iris from there. So it was like, the kind of control it gives to the DP, because your image is being checked and being washed, and there is an additional set of eyes looking at it. So most of the times, what we were doing, so we were doing the live grade, so we would see, okay, where we want to expose it and how we want the grade to be. And there were times, where Declan was like, I want to make it a little darker, and I was like, we might lose some information, so let's just expose this just half stop brighter, and I will grade it darker for you, so you don't have to send the brighter image to the editor. And we could do that, and we had the images from all the days. So say if we are doing a patch of the previous scene, so we could pull up that image and it's like, okay, we could match to that. We had all the metadata with us, and so we were doing that. And it was, I mean, at the end of the day, I will export the CDLs and whatever I'd graded, and I would send it to my dailies colorist. He would apply that grade, or if I have any correction, like something we shot at the end of the day, and we are like, okay, I like what I graded, but maybe you could, just give it a hint of warmth, and he would do that. And there was this other unit. So now we didn't have a DIT on another unit. So what we were doing, so they were shooting it, they were sending it to Daily's colorist. He was grading it, and he was sending all graded stills to me and Declan, and we would see it and we would send him the feedback on like how we want it to be, because it was like a same show, and Declan wanted, even if there were other DP shooting it, because he wanted it to be like look.
Who was doing the second camera?
So with us, we had in the beginning we had Siddharth, and then we had Shreya, and on our unit, yeah, Shreya. Awesome. And so and there were a lot of things that we could see on set, and like there are things which you cannot see on the monitor or you cannot see in the viewfinder, and we were looking at all the flickers, and we were also kind of see. So there are times when you're like, okay, we could can we do slightly, we can push this one. And sometimes we were like, no, not maybe we can push it in the grade, maybe you push it in the exposure. And then what we were also doing is, oh my god, We did so much on that project. I
Mehak,
remember.
I will just interrupt for a bit because I just want to inform everyone who's here that this session is going to end and I'm going to restart the session because
How
we
many
have a
minutes
lot.
it's been?
It's almost been an hour, just 3-4 minutes left. Maybe you can
Okay.
also collect your thoughts on
Yeah.
a suitable boy process in the
And
meanwhile.
we'll continue on that.
Yes, because we have lots to talk. We have to talk about, how can one go about being a colorist, and also how can one plan better so that you can utilize your time in the post
Yeah.
in a much useful manner. And
Yeah.
also this conversation about the uses of a DIT on
Yeah.
set. So all this we'll cover in part two. I'm just going
Part
to
two.
end this session and I'm going to start it again. So all of you who are here, please join again.
Hi everyone, welcome back.
Waiting for Mehak to join us and then continue talking about a suitable boy. Welcome back,
Hi.
Mehak. Okay, so we were talking about suitable boy and how different units worked and how you were working with DP to set the look and help out, with all
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was amazing. So we were actually, I'm just collecting my thoughts. It was a very, very long shoot, and we had to kind of, so it's a 6 episode series. One episode is around 55 minutes or something. So, lot of, so we did a long number of days, and so the idea was to kind of maintain the grade as we go along and shoot in different locations. And
I think it would be the first project in India which had live grade set up on shoot.
I think Sid has worked on some projects earlier, but for me
I
it
remember
was
that
first.
he did have a setup
Yeah, yeah,
on Byomkesh, but
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
think in a way that that if you can share how did you go about it with your live grade setup,
Yeah.
then we understand better as to how it is working in current time.
Yeah, so basically the whole setup was like that we will get the log, S-log feed from both the cameras to my cart, and we will see it on our monitor and grade it live. And I was using Comfort Live Grade, and from my setup we were giving feed to the director and the other crew's monitor. And so when they were seeing the footage, they were already seeing the graded files. And we also had a control, like we were grading it, but we could also see the log image at the same. So it's just a one button press. You say, okay, I want to see log, I want to see Rec 79, or I want to see the grade. So we could do that. And same with the scope. So we had scopes for both the cameras, so we could see the image as well as the scopes at the same time. So that was really helpful, because when you are just thinking about that 1/4 stop, it just matters, because you could just see that. And when we were shooting exterior, and we would see, okay, this cloud patch is coming in middle of the shot, so we would just look at the scope and we would know, okay, sun is going down, and we could just slightly kind of write the exposure in the direction wherever we wanted
Right.
it. So so that was amazing, and sometimes what would happen is we would I mean, it was kind of a manner of shooting which I had never done. So before this, I was most of the time doing dailies grade. So I'm there as a DIT. So if I'm not grading, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the image. So we are looking at the focus. We are also looking at okay, if there is any kind of flicker, if there is any kind of cast that has come in. I remember there was this one shot in Island City where uh, the full shot was like out of focus somehow, or it was just not, it was out, like fully out, and none of us could see it on the monitor, and we saw it later on and we had to reshoot that, but we could still do it because we were still in the middle of the shoot. But there are many things that can be, overlooked, but so we kind of do that. And we also, so I had a dailies colorist, and he was also looking at the image. So sometimes we were like, we can you just recheck that image and just tell me how it is. So it was all about just doing checks and checks again and again. So I was doing a check on set. uh, I have my data manager. We are training our data managers to do QC. So they are
Right.
also looking. So they are also looking at dead pixels. So they have trained their eyes. Nihal and Naeem and Himanshu. They have trained their eyes to spot dead pixels. So dead pixel is this tiny pixel that comes for a frame, just for a frame. You'll miss it. Like all of us miss it. But when we are working on projects for Netflix, when you do the final output in their QC, they catch all of that. So
Right.
we are doing that QC right from the beginning. So we do that QC on set while we are at it. Of all, like if you are seeing something in reflection, if any crew member or anything that is unwanted, you are seeing people's reflection. So all of that we are doing, checking real time there. And also if there is a new piece of equipment has come in, so if there is a new lens has come in, new camera has come in, so we is like quickly just roll something and let's just do quickly test before we start shooting with it. So we do all of that. And so that is most of what we do. And also is the setup of the workflow. So in a Suitable Boy, so as I said, I was grading on set on live grade, and I was sending CDLs to my dailies colorist. He was applying those grade, and he was also grading the additional unit footage. And when he was giving the footage to the editor, he was embedding all the color information in the ALE. So that color information from us was going in Avid. And from Avid, when they were giving the final exports to the post house, it goes to them. So when it goes to them, they can import that CDL and apply those values which we have put in. So
Right.
so they already have the beginning point from where we left off. And so like in this case, so we had all the graded stills, we had given it to Declan. And right now, when the grade was happening in London, so they already had the grade that we had done right on set, and Declan had the same still. So both the colorist and Declan, they are on the same page. And so now whatever changes he wants them to do on top of that, he could just tell them that this is what we want to do. So like there were actually very, very few shots where we were discussing about windows, and we were like, okay, we don't have time now to fix this, put a flag or something, let's just, we can easily do it. And so now when you have a colorist on set, you kind of obviously DPs know, but it's just another set of eyes to say, okay, no, this is fixable, or no, this is not fixable. So
Right.
so I remember in Leela, we were doing this scene with Huma where she is sitting in front of a computer screen, and you could see all those the flicker from the screen, all those lines, going past her face, and it's just a close up of her face. And I'm like, wait, what? No, it will. Netflix will catch it in their QC. We can't have it. And we were like, what to do? And they're like, okay, is there any setting on the monitor? It's like, no, we did a same shot with another monitor with another character, and it was fine. So can we just replace the monitor? so we just replaced that computer monitor and we were good. So it's like
Right.
small fixes like this, and if there is a flicker, we're like, okay, can we just, how we can just fix it? Into like we would just do things like that, and just supporting and just maintaining the image fidelity, and just make sure that we are doing the best
What
we
are the
can.
challenges of live grade as per you? Like doing a live grade on a set here in India, other
Yeah,
than the
yeah.
cost. Other than the
Yeah,
cost.
yeah. So cost is one major, but yeah. So I mean, it was basically it's just a movement from one place to another. I mean, I had a pretty heavy cart with two
Basically,
monitors.
sorry to interrupt, but
Hmm.
basically what I'm also trying to understand is that let's say somebody is trying to incorporate live grade in their future projects. So what are the things that they should keep in mind when they are thinking of
I
incorporating
mean, I
live
mean,
grade?
first of all, just put it in the budget. You know, I'm
Right.
telling you, like, and put it on the table with the production house. First thing. So everybody is kind of mentally prepped for, because this is something new. You know, you have got this new piece of equipment, this new person, and on set, and everybody needs to kind of accommodate it. Like we were shooting in small sets, like small houses in Suitable Boy, you know. And I'll tell you, like, all the departments were there to help me, and
Hmm.
all the departments. So as soon as they would block the scene, first AD would mark the spot with Declan for me. Okay, this is where Mehak will go, and then we would get and the production will get us help, like extra hands to pull that big ass cart to the first floor. I will request my on-set art director, okay, can we, you know, kind of fit in here, this is a place we want to be. And so and they would help us that, and we would just lighting department. So Muli Kaka had assigned one person on his unit. Okay, this person, if you need power, wherever you need power, you just tell him. So Amit Dada was
Right.
my guy on Suitable Boy, and wherever I'll move, and as soon as I have the information where I'll move, I'll tell him, you know, I need to just move to this place, मेरा आप मेरे लिए power दे दीजिए वहाँ पे. So it was like everybody comes together, and then your camera team, most important, and your video assist person. I had Ganesh Dada on this, and he was like, okay, or if he sees if they have given me a spot which doesn't work for him, so he would tell me, and I was like, okay, Declan, can we just change the spot? I'll go to the first aid, you know, here we can't, or I won't get the range, or Teradek will come in frame, or so many things. So it's like the whole your team, the whole unit is there to help you. And yes, production does help you, because they know that that Declan won't start shooting until we are set up. So nobody
Right.
wants to, you know, stop shooting in the middle of the day. And
And like
uh,
and like Shreya here has mentioned that it helps a lot when there are multiple units working on the shoot. So to
yeah,
sort of bring them on one page
yes,
in terms of the
definitely.
look, it's quite
Yeah, yeah,
useful.
yeah,
But do you
yeah.
see, Meg, there's a question which had come and it was on in my mind at the same time. Do you see more and more in the future that a colorist will be present on an Indian set in the
I
future? Do
mean,
you see that changing? I mean, be it as like you mentioned, a dailies colorist.
hmm,
It may not be a live grade in all scenarios, but let's say we having a dailies colorist or incorporating lux more and more. Do you see
yeah,
that
yeah.
happening
I think
more and
yes,
more?
because we get call these days. We are getting calls for dailies color a lot, even live grade. You know, so I think so, and you know, because also kind of you are we are kind of getting stretched for time in the post, and you kind of see your grade, how it is.
Hmm.
How it is to be how it's going to look. And so I think it kind of helps a lot, and I kind of see it because we are getting a lot of requests for it. Like some of the projects, they are not able to do it because of the budgetary reasons, but I'm getting more and more calls for this right now. Like Ask said, like when we were working, like we were getting a call a day. I'm telling you,
Right.
like, yeah, and even for live grade, we got a call for a live grade for an Indian Hindi movie. And
Hmm.
we went and we were like, oh my God, are you going to do this? It was amazing. We couldn't do it because of, again, expensive piece of.
But at the end of the day, I think it's all related to planning. And I
I think
think
it
if
is.
if
I
these
think,
things are planned ahead of
yeah,
time, then it
yeah,
can help a
yeah,
lot with
yeah.
the post.
I mean,
And
it
also,
can. You can save so many things. Like, those ugly pink dots. There are so many different kind of things that you kind of,
right.
you kind of see, and it also helps to kind of the whole team, like whole unit, to kind of see how it's gonna look. So, I remember for our, we had a so when we wrapped Lucknow, so we had this whole wrap party, and uh, um, Meera wanted to show the some scene sequences to the whole unit, and
Right.
I was like constantly shooting, and I was like, oh my God, we didn't have time to kind of regrade anything, so uh, we had everything from the live grade, whatever we had
Hmm.
graded on set, and
Right.
also whatever Himanshu had graded for Unit B, and we saw it, all of us, and it was a very emotional moment. We were all drunk, like really drunk, and we saw that what we have been working for so many days, and it looked so beautiful, and also because I mean, yeah, it looked so beautiful. It kind of looked like a final image, close to the final image. So
Right.
that was beautiful, and we were all there, and constantly we were cutting. They were cutting some promos
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
production houses, BBC, and other people. And we would just apply the grade we did, and we just seamlessly just do like a basic balancing on top of it just to match, so that they work in the sequence, and that's about it. And it was as good as the final, almost the final product. So it kind of helps with a lot of things. So say, for example, you want to send your film to festivals, right? If you already have, so if you don't even have
Yeah.
a daily color, but if you have like a lot on it and you are sending it to festivals, it's kind of more presentable, I feel.
Hmm.
Because in
Or
for
even
say,
a pitch, for that matter. In
for
many cases, you have
pitch,
to,
yeah, for pitch, and
or a trailer. I don't. I mean, there are so
you
many instances when you have to send the project for some screening or the other before
yeah,
the film is
before the
actually.
final grade, because if
Yeah.
most of the indie films, we also recommend to our clients that don't grade it, don't invest money in grading until you have got some screening, some festival, or got some producer who's paying for it, right? So if
Hmm.
but if the image, the it's little inconsistent, and you are like, okay, if we could just do something with it, but then you don't have time. So I mean, that there it kind of helps a lot to kind of gotten a daily colorist, or gotten a kind of LUT that works for you. Like I
Right.
know on Gama Ghar, Anand was grading the footage at the end of the day. He had graded everything. So
Wow.
when I met him, he showed me all his daily's color. Like he was also the full data manager and the
That's
daily's colorist
amazing.
on
That's
his
amazing.
film. Yeah, and he did it. And I know so many people who does it, like who because it also they kind of uh, understand the responsibility that comes with handling footage.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so yeah, and all in when we are working on indie films, we have like such a tight crew. Like everybody comes together and is doing more than what one person should do. So it's an Yeah.
I have a couple of questions that I just want to quickly take. One is by Shubhra.
Mm-hmm.
Her question is that do you think that live grading is better or grading later is better, in the sense that is quick decision making while shoot is better, or is it better to sit in post and spend more time later? You know,
See,
sit at a, with a relaxed set of mind and
yeah. I wouldn't say anything is better over others. It, everything were so every project has different needs
right.
and what works for you at that point of time. So if it is a kind of project where you think, no, I need to grade it on set, I need to have a colorist on set making decisions with me, or I need somebody to kind of grade as we go, or you say, I'm going to just come shoot a healthy raw footage, and I'm going to just come in the post and sit and kind of experiment. So I would
Right.
say that there are advantages in both, but there are no disadvantages of anything,
Hmm.
and there is nothing better over other. So
Right.
every project are different. Like, so there are sometimes they say ki, okay, let's do the live grade on this project, and we were like, you are running throughout the day every day. So I don't think live grade kind of makes sense for this kind of project, because you are running every day, you are changing location one point to another, you are shooting so much on road, and
Hmm.
it's just going to become so much difficult to keep moving all the time. So
Right.
uh, so it kind of, I think every project has a different need and different workflow. So when we get involved in a project, we kind of help make that whole workflow from shoot to the post with everything.
And what would be your advice to, let's say, for smaller projects, let's say for short films or for documentaries where it's a little trickier than
Yeah,
otherwise,
I
but they
mean
do come to you
document.
later for
Yeah,
grade, and then you
yeah.
have yeah. So
I
what is
have, I
your
have, I have graded on a lot of good docu projects, but I don't know how live grade. I don't think any of this live grade or dailies color or a lot kind of work can work for documentary,
but in
because
general,
you.
in
I mean,
general, for them to what are the things that they should keep in mind?
yeah, so basically, yes. So what actually is at least kind of get a proper data manager involved, so that all your metadata is preserved in all the steps. So say it's going from your on set, your edit, you are making dailies for the editor, and in most of the documentaries you don't even know the editor is going to be what they're going to cut, because it's such a long process you kind of
Right.
figure out. So it's very, very, very important that you have all the steps at all the steps your metadata is preserved.
Right.
And when you're transcoding, you're applying the correct lat. So say uh, you have shot on slog2, so you are when you are transcoding, you apply slog2 to rec 709 and not some other lat, because sometimes and also you need kind of a person who can just take care of that. It can be anybody from the crew if you don't have a separate person. So say you shot, say, today, and then you are going to shoot a next year, so the same set of your camera settings can be told, because there might be another DP shooting it. So say if you're shooting 25 fps,
Hmm.
you can shoot the same fps. You can just, because I have seen this happens in long projects, that it kind of drifts, and then it becomes a little complicated, unless you need to kind of drift from it. I think you can take help of somebody. Like, I sometimes some of my clients are like, we don't have budget. It's like, but we have got somebody who's like an AD who is doing it. I said, okay, just have him call me. I can at least tell them basic steps to take care of, and
Right.
to kind of how to offload it safely, how to make copies, and how to log, like how to make reports, uh, because it's like everybody's heart and soul, at that point of time. So much hard work goes into it, and then you lose some footage, and that's about it. It's like 20 days of shoot, and um,
Hmm.
I mean, anything. It could be just mismanagement of it. It could be renaming of it. How you need to rename it, or do you need to rename it, or how do we go about it? Just do the whole workflow. So what we also do for all our project is, when we do, so I said we do like multiple tests. So in one of the tests, we say, okay, let's do like a full workflow test with all the departments. So we get sound involved, we get VFX involved, we get editor involved. So we shoot something, and then we transcode it and send it to the editor. The editor would kind of make like a scene, sync sound on it, then send it to the sound, so they know, okay, everything is reconnected fine, all the metadata has come to them. Then they will send it to VFX, and so no, they will send it to us, like if we are grading it. So we connect with the raw footage. We're like, okay, it links fine, or it doesn't link fine. Where did it go wrong? There was a transcoding not right. There was something done in the export.
Right.
What happened there, and then to the VFX. So, and then get an output from VFX. So we know, okay, this is the workflow. Like if you are, say, doing ACEs, like it sometimes will become complicated with VFX. Okay, so you kind of have to take those calls in pre. Like, are you going to do ACEs? Okay, we are going to do ACEs. Okay, then is VFX, because if you're doing ACEs, it just works if everybody's working on the same color management system, and
Right.
because then you can kind of see everywhere same. So say if they are using ACEs and we are using ACEs, so when director is going from, or a DP is going from color to VFX house, so they kind of see the same image.
Right.
It doesn't have to be like, okay, it's just VFX, so we just have to look at VFX part. It just can be like, okay, this is how it looks, and then you can, in the whole picture, you can see, okay, how it looks with the VFX done. So just to smooth line this number of
Work too.
steps that you have to
Yeah.
do, the whole pipeline. And
Yeah.
now with HDR in play, it's like more interesting. So I
Which would
think
no, you say. You say.
so I think it's kind of just get some, just need more people who kind of just understand. It doesn't have to be a DIT to understand the whole workflow thing, but somebody who's kind of can manage the whole thing it doesn't have to be a big project. It can be a
Right.
small project. Even in all the projects, you kind of see that there are, like, I remember Amis when we did, and it was, so I sent a long email to them about how I want the files to be, and and everything was like as per I wanted it, and I was like, amazing. And it was so organized, everything was so organized in the whole thing, and you're like, this is amazing. And it kind of makes the whole project and whole the experience of it so pleasant and so smooth. Like, you don't have to
Right.
worry about anything, and if there is something somebody doesn't know, they would just call and how to do this, and we'll say, okay, just put it on this layer. And it was just so smooth. And also communication, very
Right.
important. So communication between the departments, and if it's clear, like, so
I have seen often the post-production supervisors getting sleepless nights and pretty much a lot of work
Yeah.
later on because of these discrepancies, which tend to happen,
which
or
can be avoided.
something. Yeah, which
Most of
also
it.
like how which will also result in a better work-life balance also, because when you end up working in a really tiresome manner,
Yeah.
it just becomes more of a, rather than being an enjoyable creative process, it just becomes some almost like troubleshooting, firefighting.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
and you know how it, I mean, when I go on set and when I work in the studio, it kind of helps me, just to kind of switch between the two, because set is all about troubleshooting. Like, and also seeing things like you have, like your eyes can't be tired because
Right.
you are deciding how you gonna expose the image, and I say something and you're like, oh my god, I didn't see it on set, oh my god. No, you can't do this, you have to see it. So you have to be kind of awake. And when we are, so whatever I learn on set, I kind of apply it when I'm grading. So when I'm seeing an image, I kind of understand the intentions of the DP more, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea would be to work in a manner so that you don't end up at some time falling asleep on set or
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
grade, because when sometimes the shifts go on for like more than 16 hours, 24 hours, at sometimes it has happened to me, like, I would start wondering that is it soft or is it like that my eyes are shutting,
I
that can
know, I
also,
know. It
so,
happens in grade also all the time. Like I remember, I was grading a black and white music video. At the end of the day, I was like, why does it look little yellow? And I'm like, no, it is not yellow. I'm checking my vectorscope. I'm checking my layers. There's no yellow in it. It just, and I was like, oh my god, it's time to go home.
yeah,
There is
yeah.
this
I
yellow
mean,
cast.
you need a fresh set of eyes to be able to
Yeah,
make those calls. You can't
yeah,
possibly be doing them in a tired fashion all the time.
yeah,
Now,
yeah, yeah,
I have to take one question. I'm so sorry. Pooja had
yeah,
asked it long back, but we just drifted away to
yeah.
work-life balance. So Pooja had a question about when you have a pre-decided LUT, would you recommend a DOP to shoot on ProRes or still shoot RAW?
I mean, it is irrespective of the LUT. I mean, it doesn't affect it. It doesn't affect that you are shooting ProRes or you are shooting RAW that you have a LUT. Yeah, I mean, I
But
wouldn't
Mehak, one thing is
recommend
also
anything.
that now with all these OTT platforms coming up,
Yeah,
places like Netflix, Amazon, and they have their own checklist for what they want out of a
yeah,
project.
yeah, yeah.
So then, how does it affect a particular project when you're working on it?
I actually, so say if we are doing, so we have been doing a lot of projects for Netflix, and we take their checklist and we say, okay, this is this. So they, some things are like, okay, you have to shoot 4K sensor, like you have to shoot RAW. There are like
Right.
things, and other things where when it comes to workflow, there are suggestions, right? So there are no so there are some things that they say, okay, you have to do this, and some things they say, we suggest you do this. So you
Right.
can take
Okay.
a call where so like they say, okay, ACEs. So they are not saying, they are saying we want color managed project, and that is because they want to archive, and so that if 10 years later they want to do something, if there's some new, like how HDR has come, and something else comes up, some other new color space comes, and they want to kind of produce the same film or series in the new thing, and how they do it. So they kind of suggest some things, and we use that. We can take the suggestion or kind of working in the same parameters, like and utilize it. But I think none of their suggestions or none of the things that they're asking for is kind of a roadblock for us. Like
Okay.
what all it is doing, it what I see is like it kind of brings more quality to it. Like I remember when we did, what was the first project? I think the Lust Stories or Ghoul. No, Lust Stories we did, and and when we sent it to them, and there was this QC, they do this QC, and we send it. There's like, oh, there is this small dot. Again, there was just one dot, and we never saw it. I thought maybe it's small, tiny something. I just saw it, but maybe I thought it's the dust on the monitor, and I just cleaned it, and I then moved on. And it's like, oh, and then we figured, and then I was speaking to the first AC, and I was like, I see this, and Pradeep ji, and he said, there was this camera change, and I talked to Silver, and he's like, yeah, there was a camera change. There was this another camera which had come for one day, which was not tested. And I said, okay. So we couldn't see it.
It is,
so
those things are always tricky. I have also faced problems when camera changes, and in the middle of the shoot, and it comes and you haven't like really tested. And,
so all their QCs kind of training our eyes. So that is actually good, because you are kind of seeing more now. Like we are, like me and Sid, we often talk about it. Now we are seeing more stuff. Like now we can see dead pixels which we could not see earlier. So I think it's just bringing more quality in terms of image fidelity, and how you don't let small things slip. Like, okay, you saw some reflection, and you're like, no, and you'd see those mic transmitters bulges, and you're like, no, just clean it. Before we send it to them, we just send it for cleanup. So now me and Sid, we do our own QC. So if any project is going toward QC, we sit and watch it, or we have got on our HDR TV and in vivid mode, so that we can see all extra colorful, extra everything is because it's also brighter, so you can also see. So there, which we could not see on the graded image. There was this one scene in Della which on monitor it just looked fine, but when we put it on TV, put the brightness up, and we could see some crew people walking in the background, and we got it cleaned up before we even send it to Netflix. I think it just kind of bringing more quality to it, just training our eyes to see more, and how we can just improve things.
Right. So Vandita has a comment about you sharing a great anecdote about work-life balance from the set of Suitable Boy.
Yeah.
Can you share that here as well?
We were grading something, and I was like, oh, that was amazing. So on our unit, we were doing 5 days a week. Okay.
Right.
And we were doing 5 days a week, and I had never done 5 days a week. And before the shoot, I, like in the studio also, I was doing 6 days a week, and we did 5 days a week, and I was like, wow, it feels. So what was happening is, so one day you kind of just rest and relax, and there is this another day you have got when you are not tired. You can do other things. You can go out, you can meet friends, or you can read, you can just watch something. And I was, and then when you actually working on those 5 days, you are just more efficient, and you are more active because you are not tired. Otherwise, on shoots, what happens, you are shooting for 40 days and you get so tired, then you're like, you just want it to finish. But if you are getting enough rest, like towards the end of Suitable Boy also, we went back to 6 days towards the end. But that beginning 2 months, 2-3 months, it was like, I was like, wow, and then your brain, you can also think about things, and then you are more present. So you are more present on set. So I came back, and I was like, now I'm going to do 5 days a week in the studio. And I started doing 5 days a week, and it was lovely. And I was doing 5 days a week before Corona. There was this 1 week where I was like, I had to go to studio to export a file or something, and I was like, shit. But yeah, so that we were talking about it, how we kind of take it and there, what was happening is, so there were some days and they had cut some promo, and production was like, we have 2 days off, and can you just do this? And I was like, what? It's my off day. So nobody was taking it for granted. It's your off day. You can just come and grade it. And everybody, this time was respected, And I was like, oh my God, I just respect my time more. And then, eventually everybody will start respecting it. So that was something me and Vandita were talking about, drinking coffee in the kitchen. in the studio, and uh, and then
Yeah, I
we were
think,
like, yeah, it's so important.
yeah, and going forward, I think when we get back to working in a more planned manner is
Yeah,
crucial. You know, if we
yeah,
were taking certain leeways earlier, I
yeah,
think those leeways are something which cannot be taken
yeah,
uh, for quite some time. You know, you cannot guarantee that things won't fall back to how they
yeah.
were, but at the same time, it is essential. It's absolutely crucial now to plan more and figure out a way to work with probably fewer people, and which again uh,
That's going to
requires,
happen.
right.
I think it's going to
And
happen.
also, like,
Fewer people.
to keep up your immunity and everything, it's required that you get proper rest,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
work in a
yeah.
human way. So
And multitasking also. Like less people will be doing more work.
yeah, and I have a question for you, but I want to take one more question from Vandita, which is about what are the requirements to shoot for both HDR and HDR for Netflix, and do you have any suggestions for exposing for both simultaneously?
So basically, um, uh, for Netflix, what we do is we are grading the HDR version. That's their main output, and then we do SDR trim pass on it, right? Uh, so so if you're just exposing it for one, it's fine for another, because it's not going to, because you have that much data, and anyway you need lesser data in SDR. I mean lesser dynamic range in SDR. So I have not done that much work in HDR. I was grading actually. Actually, I did grade a short film. Not I didn't finish it. So um, Shreya's sister has directed a short called Bittu, which
Right.
we were going to grade, I think, after coming back from Suitable Boy, and we were like, okay, why don't we try it in HDR, and also because HDR has this 1,000 nits and so much more room to play with, and I had not done anything in HDR before, so we were like, let's just kind of, and also because she wanted an image which is much lower contrast, and I wanted to see how a lower contrast image can play out in HDR, when you don't
Right.
want your peak to go 1,000, so and we kind of, I think I barely went above around 100, 150 in HDR, but I didn't finish it. We had to finish our 48 nits file. So I think uh, just so that not exposing, not overexposing the highlights at this point of time, I would say, because earlier what would just pass as like in SDR, even if you overexpose some lights, the sources, I think the practicals is the major challenge that people are talking about in HDR. Uh,
Hmm.
that is just to take care of the practicals and all of that. So I have not actually done much work in HDR, or so I won't be the correct person to suggest anything. But now, so earlier, what was happening is that the HDR monitors on are like still are very, very expensive. But I think eventually, will the rates will come down, and we will start getting HDR monitor on set.
Right.
So I think that will help us. But and also because you can see so much in the shadows in HDR, you can
Right.
see everything, you can't just hide anything, and that's a beauty of it. Like once you have seen the sky, so when I was grading Shreya's film, and the sky was beautiful, and when I came to 14, I was like, something is wrong, and I was like, something is wrong, but I'm checking my scopes, I'm checking, everything is fine, it's not wrong. And then I realized, oh my god, that's how I've been seeing the sky. So
Right.
it was once you have seen it, you can't unsee it. So it took me like I took a day or 2 day break, and then I went back to grading the SDR. So yeah, I think just taking care of your shadows and highlights at this
Right.
point. But yeah.
Priya had a question long back in the previous
Hmm.
session, which I couldn't take at that
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
She mentioned about a lot of people shooting more so in the shadows, playing with the dark images quite a
Hmm.
bit.
Hmm.
Do you see that happening a lot? And like, what are the challenges with images which are which primarily end up having shadows?
I mean, when it so when it comes to us, and uh, basically just getting a healthy uh, original camera footage, I would
Hmm.
say, for me it kind of works. And also you can, how you are lighting it, kind of, it depends more on that, like what kind of lighting you're doing to get that image. For me, like as a colorist, if it's like a well exposed image, I have the bottom end to me to play with,
Hmm.
the whole bottom end to play with, because then you are trying to create those zones in the shadows, because you are just at the bottom end, so that kind of helps us.
Right.
So that's what I can say about it.
And now coming to the question about how can one go about becoming a colorist. Now this is the time when I think a lot of many people who probably are I mean thinking of becoming
Hmm.
a colorist. I think a lot of this time can be utilized towards getting there.
Yeah.
So how can one prep for it, or how can let's say even when things begin, uh,
Hmm.
what advice would you give to a person, let's say, other than being a colorist, also pursuing a career as a DIT? Because many cinematography students, when they come out of film school, they work as an AC or and progress their way up to being a
Yeah.
cinematographer. And I think what you were mentioning about the job of a DIT on set, a lot of times ACs end up doing that, on an Indian film set. So, what would be your advice to people who are like, let's say, freshly getting out of college, and
Mm-hmm.
otherwise people who are have considered being a colorist? How can they go about it?
I think this is the best time to kind of, if they are in that frame of mind, because there are so many resources out there right now. I mean, so many people are generously sharing, and
Right,
basically, like, to start. So there is a technical part of it, and then there is a creative part of it. So you can learn the technical part, and for the creative part, for both, I would say, because for both colorist and DIT, uh, having an understanding of photography, having understanding of basics of photography, having an understanding of cameras, cameras in general, and then specific cameras
right,
is very important, because the whole camera team is looking at you, because you have gone on set, you are the DIT, you are considered specialist, so you better know it. So
right,
say you are reading the camera manuals, so you know what is where, so all the formats, all the codecs that camera is shooting, so you understand about what each codec is doing. And so
hmm.
it's a lot about testing, lot of, so you okay, how do you do this? It's a long process. Okay, so there are so first, basically, what you can do, you read about it, and then you get into testing. Okay, so say you have a camera, any camera, or you have a friend who has a camera, you ask them to shoot something for you, right? And then you get that footage. So say I want to see like how this camera's 2 codec work. So I'll say, okay, just shoot some footage in it, and, and then you kind of see how the camera is behaving when it is underexposed. So, so all that latitude test that you do, you kind of get to that. But in the beginning, you get your basic strong. So there are a lot of books, there are a lot of websites which are there. So you understand. I think so because I kind of started work. I joined in the middle. I kind of didn't come from the camera background, and I just got in the middle. So just going back, and this is a good time that I am also learning so much about the basics of the camera and how so some things you just know depth of field, and you're like, okay, depth of field, that's it. But then I was reading, I was like, oh my god, there are so many things that impact depth of field, which
Right.
you think that people would know, but no, people, it's not so common. Like you need to read, because in this day and age, when if we have a question, we just Google it and you get a one-line answer and you just tell it to the next person. So I'd say just to kind of deepen that understanding of the camera. So so I'm reading this Ansel Adams book Camera, of his photo series, and I don't have any I don't have any context to the film photography, right? Or photography in general. I have a context to cinematography because I've been on set. So now I'm connecting everything to that, and it connects so
Right.
well, and it explains so many concepts. So I would
Hmm.
suggest that you start there. You start from the basics, and then you go up. Okay, now you understand about photography and the basic principles, and now you're like, okay, how this camera works, and how the other camera works, and what is a codec, and what is this. Then you get into formats, and then you get into color science, and then you're like, okay, and then you get your hands on. You have like Resolve is free for
Right.
everyone to try hands on. It's an awesome tool. Like even if you don't have a studio version, you use a light version. It has everything you need. You can ask your friend to send some images, send some videos. I mean,
Right.
and there are so many sample footage online that you can access, you can download and grade. So I don't think at this point of age there is any excuse for
Hmm.
saying, oh, we don't have access. I was trying I was trying to get in a big studio,
Hmm.
and I called them and I was like, I'm a learner, I'm learning photography, not photography, like color grading, and can I intern with you? And they said, oh, we don't take intern. Why don't you come as a conformist? I was like, why don't you intern with a conformist? No, they didn't even offer that. They just said we don't take interns. And I was like, how do I get in? And then you realize that's how it was in the initial times.
Hmm.
If the big studios won't take you, and there were only big studios, how do you get in? But these days it's relatively easier, but but I think the learning part is the major.
Right.
So am I making sense?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think
Yeah,
that there are so many cameras that are coming up, and technology is innovating with every
yeah,
passing year, and there's so much to learn. And when it comes to, let's say, people who are starting out and they want to get into they're still deciding, figuring out what they want to
yeah,
do. I think this can
yeah,
be one of the good starting points. And also, like, if
yeah,
you want to
yeah,
progress to, let's say, being a colorist, or let's say eventually a cinematographer, all these aspects come in very handy. And I think
yeah, yeah,
they can be a good starting point for anyone
yeah, yeah,
who's thinking of
yeah,
how to begin.
yeah,
Because, let's say, over a period of time, at least I think that, I think somewhere in 2013, like I was assisting on a shoot. This DP, Japanese DP who shot the movie La Vie en Rose,
Yeah,
Tetsuo
Tetsuya
Nagata,
Nagata. I worked with him too.
and and this was in 2013, and there was some there were two cameras, and one of the cameras had a lens on which didn't have enough opening, and and I walked up to him and I asked him that, how do you want to like compensate for this? And he was like, that's for my DIT to figure. That's not for
Yeah.
me to figure. And I was like, okay, that's not how it really works here. But things are changing. This was way
Things are
back in
changing.
2013,
I think.
and
And I think
and
DPs.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
go
say,
ahead, go ahead.
you go
I
ahead.
think the cinematography students are more equipped because
Yeah,
they understand the whole cinematography part, and they understand exposure, they understand the scopes, and the whole shebang. They understand it. So I think coming somebody like, see, imagine I'm like from editing background. I'm just learning about it. But imagine somebody
right,
who's already knows about it, and it's such a they and it's also, when you're a DIT, you're dealing closely with the DP. So when I am
hmm,
working there, I am closely working with the DP. So when you are assistant, it's also a great opportunity. Maybe a
yeah,
DIT is as a DIT, I am closer. Like, I spend more time with the DP than you would as an assistant, right? And also because you're looking at the image, you're looking at the final product, so you are looking at everything that's getting in, and you as a cinematography student or enthusiast, you have more understanding of light, you have more understanding of creating and seeing that vision come alive. So I think the people who have a background of cinematography and photography, they would have more aptitude also, and they would be more uh, skilled, I think, to
right,
kind of take up this job, because it is about so much. So you're like, okay, I am doing this. I'm reduce my focus was like, okay, we just, can you do something? Can you give us something? It's like full open, and I'm like, wait, let me just do something. Let me just kind of figure out how I can give you that half stop that you need. And or
right,
if I can't, I'll tell my DP, can you do something with the light? So
right. I
so
think it gives a
yeah, so,
very good opportunity to combine technical information with the creative
yeah, yeah,
outlook,
yeah. And
and
at this time and age, I think, I have got such generous people, whom I worked with, like Shankar sir. He's been my mentor since Fireflies, and he has just taught me things generously and pushed me. Sabal and Sylvester and Sid and so many other people who I have worked with. And I think in this day and age, there are
hmm,
people who will just push you, and there are people who will teach you, so I think if you really want to learn something now, there are people that there to teach you.
right,
And there is going on so much right now. So if you go, like, there are so many resources I could suggest. There are so many books out there, but you know what I've realized? It's not never the lack of resources. it just it just takes time to learn something, and it needs time. Now I have been home for like 2 months, and I right now I can't abhi I can't get away with, I don't have time to learn this, and I'm like, okay, what I'm doing. And then
right,
your whole body kind of recoils, and you can just sit down to read that book, and it takes so much out of you because you are not used to of doing that. So
hmm,
I would suggest everybody to just go back and just do books and then practice. Like,
right,
I'm not been doing it on this 2 months, but I would say last 10 days, I've been just looking at images and looking at things differently. I've just been looking at how they are treating trees and the greens in the images, in different images, and then if you put all the different images from different shows together, different movies together, different photographs, and you'll see how they have treated greens, and you're like, okay, this looks like that can, and then you go and try doing that thing, and you will realize that uh, it is not just one thing that you are doing. You are not only just affecting the greens, you get to get the greens where they are, you are impacting the whole look of the frame. And it just in doing so much, it's so much in practicing.
Mac, I can't believe that we spoke for 2 hours and there's like still so much. But I'm afraid I have to finish this session. Thank you everyone for
No
joining in.
worries, it was
And it
fun.
was great, and keep joining in for many more sessions to come. Thank you, Mahek.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for all the love.